Welcome into the K0LWC Ham Shack. Is AM radio in your car a thing of the past? Well, not if the US government has anything to say about it. Now, you might be thinking, AM radio, is that even still a thing? And the answer is yes. For nearly a century, AM radio has played an important role in disseminating information to citizens across the United States, especially as a backbone of our emergency alert system. And I'm one of those folks. I do drive a Tesla, and I do not have AM radio in my car. If I want to listen to a local AM radio station, I have to choose a streaming option, which I can still get all my AM stations. It's just I'm streaming it over the internet versus getting an actual RF signal. But as we all know, technology and times are changing. As electric and hybrid vehicles have become more popular, a lot of auto manufacturers want to sunset AM radio in your vehicle. And there's a reason for that. It takes a little bit of extra engineering and cost to eliminate interference to AM radio signals from electric motors. So auto manufacturers would rather just not deal with that and get rid of AM radio altogether. Their argument is that you can get that same information that you find on AM radio through your cell phone or through an FM radio station, and that simply AM radio is not really needed anymore. But this is where things get interesting. The U.S. government is not really having it, as auto manufacturers like Tesla, Volvo, BMW have started to sunset AM radio out of vehicles. They're saying, wait a minute, not so fast. And here's what's really intriguing is recently, last year, there was a nationwide emergency alert test. And in that test, they looked at how did citizens receive information. And what they found was the majority, 95% of people that they surveyed got the information on their cell phone. Only 1% got that emergency information from AM radio. So it seems like an open and shut case, doesn't it? So what the U.S. government has done is they've worked on legislation. This is a bipartisan bill in a time when it's almost impossible to be bipartisan on anything. It is the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act of, I think it's 2023. They introduced this bill, and what's newsworthy here is it just passed the committee to move to the full House of Representatives for a full vote. And so it passed committee by a vote of 45-2. 45-2. That's a massive, massive passing of this legislation. So now it moves to the floor for a full House vote. Then, of course, it needs to go to the Senate and eventually be signed by the president. But with the vote coming out of committee, it sure seems like it has a lot of support and is, I would say, likely to pass, where the U.S. government is going to require that every vehicle sold in the U.S. has AM radio, and it cannot be passed on to the customer as an additional cost. Like, oh, yeah, you can order that BMW, but you got to pay an extra $500 if you want AM radio. They cannot charge extra. So it sure seems like it's got a lot of support on Capitol Hill. And I got to say, I'm a little bit torn, but I see both sides of this argument. As a ham radio operator, I understand that AM radio is unique. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the video, right? It can reach areas where other radio stations just cannot, and there's nothing like the reliability of a good old-fashioned RF signal, not relying on some of our newer technology, whether it's satellite-based, internet-based things, right? It just has that reliability. But at the same time, I understand that as technology and vehicles progress, whether it's electric vehicles, systems for safety, sensors in the car, and interacting with AM radio and trying to make sure they can coexist, that you don't want to hold back the kind of evolution of technology in vehicles due to AM radio. So I see both sides, and that, again, I think for the vast majority of emergency situations, cell phones, satellite connectivity are going to be more than sufficient to handle most stuff. But in the worst case scenario, AM radio is going to play a role. When I say worst case scenario, I'm talking like major, large-scale disaster, Katrina-like when it comes to hurricanes, significant military developments in the world that involve the U.S., perhaps here at the homeland. Like when we really need communication at the absolute most important time, I think AM radio still plays an important role, and we don't want to forget that and leave that behind, because the newer technology is just so susceptible to being, impacted. Just look at what's been happening recently overseas with communication technology, right? So I see both sides, but I really do probably lean more towards that we shouldn't just leave AM radio yet. I get that it's a relic. I actually listen to AM radio. I like AM radio. It's probably because I'm a radio nerd, but I like it. The tonal quality of it. I used to work in broadcast radio, so I have kind of an affinity there for it. I listen to a lot of stuff on AM, actually. Not to mention, when I first got started on radio, I used to do AM DXing as a kid from my bedroom on my boombox. So it has a special place for me. I'm a little bit biased, but I do think that from a pure highest level of national security and getting out emergency communications, that yes, we should not abandon AM radio in this country. But that's my opinion. What do you think? Leave a comment down below. Am I right? Am I wrong? Where do you see this going? It sure looks like it's going to pass. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll catch you again next time.